Clinton Miner here from Sawtooth Bushcraft. We are out looking for antelope. My son-in-law Stephen has drawn an archery tag for pronghorn antelope. We are in Owyhee County, which is the southwest corner of Idaho, biggest county in Idaho. And as you can see, it is the sage that goes on the Sage to Sawtooth Bushcraft. This is what we call desert. Very little rain out here. There is quite a lot of grass. There's a lot of life out here, and we're going to be looking at some of that here in this video. One of the main things I hope to be able to do is to show you that along the creeks there's quite a lot of life, and we're going to take a look at some resources that we can find out even in a desert situation like this. So stay tuned. Where we are at this point, I'm in a ravine. There's a little bit of water flowing in a creek. It is the first week of September, and typical of this area, it's going to be over 100 degrees today. It's already in the 90s. Very dry climate. The grass is all dry, very, very high fire risk. But even in this dry climate, where we've got some water and where we've got some disruption, we've got some resources. And so what we've got here is the elderberry bush. Elderberry is a pretty common thing here in the state of Idaho. In the mountains, the Sawtooth part of the Sage to Sawtooth Bushcraft, they're everywhere. You can find them very, very common, and really quite an important resource, especially for bear. In an area like this, not as common, although we've seen them a number of times today as we've been going around. We're again in Owyhee County, southwest corner of Idaho, high mountain desert, very little rainfall. But these berries are just about ready to pick. I'm going to take some of them. Some of them are just green, but some of them are really quite ripe and ready to pick. So we're going to go ahead and pick those. And the easiest way to pick an elderberry is simply to take the whole stem. We'll do that. We'll take some of those home and we'll juice them, and we'll make them into elderberry syrup and maybe even some jelly. They make really good syrup and very easy to take care of. All you'd have to do is just throw this whole stem in a juicer and juice it, and you get some good juice that can then be turned into syrup or jelly. The other thing this elderberry juice is good for is it's a really high antioxidant. It's also really a good antiviral. At the beginning of this COVID issue, the coronavirus, a lot of information came out about using this for antiviral purposes. We actually, at our home, we bought some online that I think came from Europe. We're going to make some out of fresh elderberries this year, so we've got something that tastes a little better and is a little more of what we're accustomed to. So I'm going to go ahead and pick some of these. One other thing I wanted to share with you when you're looking at an elderberry, these bushes grow back year after year, but they kind of grow back from the roots as much as anything. There is some growth back on the green, but one of the things that happens with it is because it grows back from the roots, you don't get much of an actual tree out of this. It just turns into a bush. Some of them get pretty big, but most of them stay pretty small. The other thing that you can do with an elderberry, and I will here in a minute we'll cut one and then I will show you, but you can turn these things into a straw or a tube really quite easily, because the centers of these stalks are full of pith. That pith is actually quite poisonous, but it can be cleaned out, and then you can be left with a hollow stalk that you can use for a fire bellow or for a small pipe, all kinds of things. So I'm going to go ahead and do some picking here, and then I'll go ahead and cut one of those and we'll process it later. So I've cut this one of the stalks off, and you can see here there is an inner pith, just a very soft, spongy material in the middle. What I'm going to do, I'm going to do a couple of things. I'm going to take this back to the house. I will cut one chunk of that long enough that I can use it for a fire blower, and we'll see if we can't clean it out. The other thing I want to do is take a small chunk of it, and I'm going to make a little tube with an end on it that I can put some needles and some things in as a needle carrier. So we'll work at that back of the house, so stay tuned. All right, we're not far from where we just filmed, where I was just showing you the elderberries. Come up half a mile or so up the road along that same creek, and we've come across this, and this is a hawberry bush. You've heard of hawthorns. Well, that's why it's called hawthorns. I don't know if I can show you that. I'll break off a branch if I can, or cut off a branch. That's what's going to have to happen. This is not a bush you want to crawl into, but if you look right here, you can see the thorns are just nasty, hawthorn. And on this are these berries. And these berries are not particularly tasty. They don't have a lot of flavor. But they're sweet, kind of gummy inside, kind of a goo, a lot of seeds, nutritious. Can't talk with my mouth full. Nutritious, and something that grows in abundance here and all over the mountains of this part of Idaho. A really super resource that I'm right in the middle of the desert, but just on water. I have this this hawthorn berry that I can use to get the berries off from. It's a resource for food. Also, those thorns I showed you, those can be used to make fish hooks. So a great resource. Hawberry bush, hawthorn bush, all over southwestern Idaho, clear up into the 6,000, 7,000, 8,000 foot range of the mountains around here. Down here at about 5,000 feet up in this high desert area, a real resource for you. The next thing I'm going to share with you here is the wild rose bushes, and I'm not going to get in front of the camera. But what I've got here, we're along the same road. There is a little bit of a stream that I think is dry this time of the year, but just where there's any moisture, these wild rose bushes grow. And what we have here on these bushes are these rose hips. As we've been driving around, these rose hips have been, these are about the smallest ones I've seen, and they're pretty ripe. Once again, they are full of seeds, but the seeds are fine. Roses are basically very, very closely related to an apple. I had one earlier today. It tasted a lot like a bland tomato. This is much, much tastier, very sweet. Got a little bit of a tangy flavor. Really quite a good berry to eat as far as taste and enjoyment. if you can get around the seeds, but also super high in antioxidants, including vitamin C, one of the best sources of vitamin C there is. And these will stay on the bush all winter, except for the birds and the animals that eat them. But through the winter, if you're in a situation where all you're eating is non-greens and meat, this is a great source to keep you from getting scurvy and to keep your immune system up. All right, we're in the same kind of country, that same high desert, mostly sagebrush. We're along that same little rivulet creek. And I've come on one additional resource that I didn't realize was here, and that is, I'm going to put my hand up here, we've got some choke cherries. Now, choke cherries aren't the tastiest fruit, at least not this time of the year when they have not frozen, but they are a very nutritious thing, and again, something that can be made into absolutely wonderful jellies and jams. Just a very, very, very tasty thing once you've cooked them a little bit. They're a high astringent, so they've got basically some alum in there or something like alum. The reason they're called choke cherries is when you eat them, they actually suck all of the juice out of your mouth, make you want to choke, but they are a very nutritious, have a really good flavor until all of the juice sucks out of your mouth, all of the liquid sucks out of your mouth, but make wonderful, wonderful syrup and juice and jellies. So far, all of the resources I've shared with you are resources that I'm familiar with and have seen everywhere I've typically camped or hunted. I have spent quite a lot of time out here in this Owyhee County country, but I've never come across this particular bush in the Owyhee County country or any of the other country in southwest Idaho or eastern Oregon, any of that kind of high desert area. In fact, the only place I've actually seen it other than as a decorative plant was when I lived in North Idaho in the Coeur d'Alene area, and this is a common snowberry. And I'm going to get in close so you can actually see the berries. They're a very white berry, and I have been taught all my life that berries white means death in sight. I was also taught when I was in North Idaho that snowberries were very poisonous and should be avoided. My research on the internet, however, has taught me or told me that in fact they are edible. They don't have much flavor, but there is nutrition in them. And as we've been in this area, we're very, very close to Oregon and very close to Nevada. We're down very far in the southwest corner of Idaho. We have seen these plants everywhere. I didn't realize that they were here. And so I will go back and do a little more research and verify that they are in fact edible. But just an incredible resource. This desert area that looks like it would support nothing has a lot of life. I'm going to include in this video some video of antelope as well as deer we've been able to see, and in addition to that, it's been a beautiful day, and there are a lot of other resources that we will talk about in future videos. So I'm right now less than half a mile, really closer to less than quarter of a mile from where I just filmed all of those different resources, the berries and the willows. You can see this is pretty barren country that you wouldn't expect to have resources that could really make your life different. But in addition to what we talked about, there's sage and buckbrush, a lot of things that we'll talk about in future videos that you can use for other purposes. But you're never in a situation where with a little knowledge you can't take some steps to subsist and survive and even thrive.